I'm back. Time to give the people what they want. Based on the amount of views I've had recently, it seems like people want more generator content. Probably has something to do with that catastrophic storm that just hit Florida. Anyway, behind me right here, I got a generator that hasn't been started in 5 years. It was a freebie. All I know about it is it was used during Hurricane Florence, and they haven't messed with it since. I haven't touched it myself. It's in the same form as it was when I got it. I've just rolled it around. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to get it going again. If I can get it running, I feel like I can get it running. Then I'm gonna revisit the whole ATF trick video, because after I get it running, get everything cleaned up on it, I'm gonna set it up to be stored again. And then I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna read some comments off that original ATF trick video, and I'm gonna give my thoughts on it. All right, intro, activate. Get down here and check this thing out. We got us 11 horsepower Craftsman, 6,000 watt. But if you look, it's actually made by Focus Generac Corporation. That's supposed to be a pretty good generator from what I understand. It's definitely built different than that old Flathead Briggs one I had. By the way, that old Flathead Briggs generator I had in the first video, it's still running strong. There's nothing wrong with it. I actually just give it to my father because he needed a generator. So this should be like if you put your generator up for an extended period of time and you kind of forgot about it. We all do it. And now you've pulled it out because there's a hurricane coming or there's a bad snowstorm coming or whatever. You're going to need it. You haven't used it. This probably should be the shape that your generator's in. Start out by checking this oil. Make sure we got some oil in it. It does have some oil in it. It's dirty, it needs to be changed, but it's not terrible. We can get by and see if this thing runs right. Now let me see if there's any gas left in it. Oh, this one's got a gauge. That doesn't work, that's rough.
It ain't got no gas in it.
There's no gas right here. But I don't know if the camera can pick it up. I'm seeing some crusty stuff. It does smell kind of varnishy. So you can take a rag, or if it's completely dry, I've done it with a shop vac, but I don't really recommend that. But you can get some of that stuff out of there, where with a little bit of gas that was left in there dried. But most of that's kind of unavoidable. So this is my answer or my solution to that. Most generators, some of them, but most of them don't come with a fuel filter. So if you put one of these bad boys on here, this is just a universal fuel filter that goes on any small engine. You can get it from O'Reilly's for like $4. That's where this one comes from. And you can get them off Amazon. You can get them wherever. Just make sure your fuel line's the right size. It's kind of just universal. You stick it on there. That'll keep any of that crap that's in that tank, that's kind of unavoidable, from getting down in your carb later. Right. I probably need to replace this fuel line anyway because it seems kind of hard. Oh yeah. So here's the problem. That gas line is so hard that I can't even get the fuel filter to go in it. Now the fuel line being a little hard like that, as long as it's not leaking, it wouldn't concern me, but I really want to put a fuel filter on this thing. You should go put a fuel filter on yours right now. Go do it. Pause the video. Go put a fuel filter on it if it doesn't already have one. Pull the air box off where I can access this line. I got one short piece of 1/4 inch fuel line. I like to use the Gates Barricade. It's designed for ethanol fuels. Now, I know you're not supposed to run ethanol fuels in your generator. Sometimes in a pinch you got to, but it doesn't matter if you don't use ethanol fuels. If you use non-ethanol all the time, that fuel line holds up better, I've found. So this is not that kind, but I do recommend going and finding and keeping some on hand of that Gates barricade. All right, if you look at these fuel filters, all of them, they have an arrow on them. I don't know if you can see that. But you want the arrow going in the direction of fuel. It's not picking up. You can bear it. There it is. You see it? So in this case, you want the fat part going down towards the carburetor, just like this. All right, this is what I come up with. I spun this thing around and got it going right here. I got the fuel filter going in the right direction. It's not in the way of pulling this, and it's not kinked anywhere. On different generators, to put a fuel filter in there, you got to get creative. All right, I got a fuel filter on it. It makes me feel a lot better. Now let's just get back into trying to see if we can get this thing to start again. I'm gonna pour some gas in it, see what happens. Who wants to take bets on whether it'll start or not? I don't think it will. This is non-ethanol. Obviously you can't always get your hands on non-ethanol, but I'm just gonna let everybody know that this is before I get some crazy comments. Here's an advantage of this fuel filter here, because it's see-through when you turn the fuel on. You see it filling up? You'll know if you're getting gas down there or not. All right, the moment of truth. Let's see if it'll start. What you saw right there, I let the fuel bowl fill up for a few seconds. I choked it, I pulled it, fired up on the first start. But you notice as soon as I try to cut the choke off, it dies out. It won't run unless the choke's on, which tells me a dirty carb. Now if you have one that doesn't start at all, what you need to do is go get you a can of carburetor cleaner, and you need to spray it in the front. You know, take the air filter off, right into where the throttle plate is. Just give it one little blast. Psh, then pull it. If it starts up, then you know you're having a fuel problem, which is the carburetor. Something's going on in the carburetor, and it's so plugged up. Like this one's plugged up a little bit. That's why it'll run only on choke. It could be so plugged up that it's not getting fuel at all. If it doesn't start off the carburetor cleaner, then you probably need to go start checking your ignition system. However, most of the time, if one's sat up for a while and you haven't used it, more than likely it's just that there's some nastiness in the car. So let's explore that right now. All right, I got me a cut off piece of an old coolant bottle. I'll stick it down here because we're getting ready to make a mess. And I need to reach up here and cut the fuel off. Now up here where the choke is, there was a little orange button. Here it is. This thing, I went ahead and pulled it off when I was putting that fuel line on. But you're going to have to pull this off to get to the carb. There was also two 10mm bolts down here at the bottom. I already took them off because I was putting that fuel line on. But before you start it, or try to start it, you're going to want to put this box back on this particular model, because these bolts right here, these nuts, hold the carburetor to the manifold. You see that right there? As soon as you take the airbox off, it'll wiggle like this. See if I can roll this thing out of the way. There we go. There we go. Carburetor nice and accessible now. This is why I got this thing down here, because I'm going to take my fuel line I just installed off, and that little bit of fuel is going to drain out. Now I'm going to have to pop this rod out right here. You can use a screwdriver, probably easier. I'm being lazy. Oh, this is a little more difficult to get it off. There we go. And there's a little spring in there too. We'll pop it out. And the carburetor slides right off. All right, here's the carb. You see the fuel is dripping out of there. Let's try to get this bowl off. Wow, that's super tight. Go. What I did is I stuck it back on the studs just long enough to where I could really put some torque on it. I'm already seeing some, look at that. See that nastiness on the end of the bolt there? Bolt. That's a mouthful. Oh, the bolt's stuck. Great. Let's give her a little wrap on the beak there. There it goes.
Just as I
Look at
thought.
all that in there.
Trash.
See all that stuff floating around in there? This is what happens when you just drain the bowl. Because the rest of that gas evaporates and that kind of crap happens. I don't know if you can see if the camera pick it up, but it's really nasty down in that hole right there. This is where the jet is, in here. Nope, excuse me, on this model it's on the side right here. This is where the jet is. You see that thing right there? That little hole right there is where the engine sucks in fuel. And then it travels up in here and then kind of gets sucked through and into the engine. Alright, time for cleaning. You're going to need a pair of safety glasses. At least I recommend them. Because sometimes when you're squirting carb cleaner, it can squirt in your eye. Ask me how I know. You want some carburetor cleaner. An old toothbrush comes in handy. Especially when they're nasty like that one is in the bottom. And these things are super handy. These are tip cleaners for a torch. They sell them in auto parts stores. But check it out. You see all those little pins? You can really get in those jets and get that crusty stuff out of there. Alright, let's get with it. Take our carb here. I want to show y'all something. Look at this right here. That was like see that it kind of made a line? That's where old fuel's sitting in there, and it was in there for so long it evaporated and left behind all this stuff right here. So we'll give it a little shot. I'll take the old raggedy toothbrush. I'm gonna do this number right here. Just spiff it up. Good. Now for this jet right here. You're gonna need a screwdriver. You see how it's got flats on both sides? I might need a wider screwdriver. Hang on. Look at that garbage in there on the back side of that jet. The hole's actually pretty clean. Either way, we're going to take this and go. We're going to stick this through the hole. Look what happens to that jet when you spray through it. Oh yeah, we're getting good. We're getting good juice flow there. Set it off to the side. Then the next thing we're going to do is blast down in here. And then give it, you want to make all these fuel passages, get all the crap out of them. Then you're going to want to dump out all this crap in this bowl. Give it a little blast. And look, an old sock can even work in a pinch if you don't have rags. And that's pretty clean. Try to get this bowl bolt cleaned off. You don't want any kind of crap that can break loose and float and stop that jet up, because it surely will. Okay, off camera, I took some light sandpaper and kind of knocked that stuff off the end. Now, we're just going to clean it all up. Reinstall the jet that we cleaned out. Pop the bowl on and take good care to make sure that this bowl seal, I need to have a talk with that a little bit. It's got some crusties on it. Make sure that that bowl seal is in the right spot, because if not, it'll leak fuel. And you just pop this thing back on right here. Make sure the little O-ring's okay, or else you'll have a leak too. And screw it back on. Now, just put the carburetor back on, just like you took it off. Make sure that you remember where the little springs and stuff go. Different models are different ways, and make sure you put it back just like it was. Probably need to get a new one of these, but for the time being, we can run this thing and see how it acts. Let's see how it runs now. Let's see if it'll run without the choke on. Gas is on, run switch is on, choke is on. As you can see, I got me a sweet running generator. It runs with the choke off now, which is beautiful. Now I need to go back and I need to change the fuel lines out, like I said, to those Gates barricade hoses, because I prefer them. I need to change the oil. That's not a big deal. This one actually has an oil filter, so I need to get some oil and some filter before I actually put it all the way up. I'm not going to do that today though. But what if I told you, you don't have to go through that ever again? All that crap that's inside the carburetor that I cleaned out. What if I told you you didn't have to do that again? Let me show you. All right, buckle up, because if you watched that ATF trick video, then some of this is going to be a repeat, but I plan on being a little more thorough. Now, the first thing is, I have non-synthetic Dextron Mercon. And one problem is, this is the new bottle. They got a big mouth on them. So I'm pretty sure that this off of the gear oil bottle, nope, it's not going to fit. So I'm going to have to pour that into this to make this work again. But my point is, I had some questions on that video about what kind of ATF you use. And I always use Dextron Mercon 3. It's the non-synthetic old school GM and Ford old school ATF. I wouldn't get the synthetics. I'm not saying they won't work. I just have always had luck with this. Besides, out of the ATFs out there that are available, this is the cheapest usually. You start getting into your higher end Dextron 4 and synthetics, they're a lot more expensive. I would definitely not use Type F transmission fluid, because it has some extra stuff in there that I'm not sure would jive with what I'm trying to do here. You don't have to buy any kind of expensive stuff. That's why I always use house brand, because what I'm doing here, it doesn't matter. Just like I did in the other video, I'm going to fire it up and I'm going to let it run out of gas. I have the gas off now. Now, you could see where right there before it was shut off, I went over there and put the choke on. That's to get a little bit of suction and get some more of that gas out of the bowl. I saw that in my comments. It's actually a really good idea. And you don't have to do that, but it gets some more gas out of there. But a common misperception, if you will, is that if you just do that, then it gets all the gas out. And that's not true. There's still a little bit of gas in there, enough to make a mess. All right, you can see I undid the gas is off. I undid the line at my filter. Another good reason to have a filter on there if it doesn't have one. It makes it nice and easy. And then I want to stick my nozzle in there, and I'm going to squirt some ATF down in the carb, right into inlet. Now, I have a lot of people ask me, or I've seen it a lot in the comments, how much do you put in there? Well, there's no set amount. The goal is, if you can, I'm gonna take this carb apart, is really, this is not the carb off this generator, but it's very similar, because they're all kind of similar. You just want enough to fill up the bottom part of the bowl right here. If you put a little too, you can't put too much in there, because let me show you something. Really plain? Like I was saying, you can't put too much in there because there's a valve. See the float? And once you put enough ATF that the float goes up like that, there's a needle in there and it shuts it off, so it can't get no more in there. So whatever it takes, and you don't even have to fill the bowl all the way up. You just want to wet the bottom. But if you do fill it all the way up, it's not a big deal. I'll show you how to get by with that. So now you've got your ATF in there, you put your fuel filter back on there, and you put your clamps back. You're going to make sure that the switch is off, and you're going to pull on it a few times. Now what you did right there, because that bowl was full of ATF, you sucked some of that ATF up inside the engine in the intake track. You blew it all over the valves and some of it on the cylinder walls of the engine. Well, ATF is a light oil, it has a lot of detergents, and it actually kind of works as a rust inhibitor. It keeps stuff from getting, not only does it kind of rinse and dilute any of the gas that could evaporate and leave behind crusty stuff. Just think of it like this. It'd be like if you filled this full of ATF, tore apart the engine and just kind of sprayed everything down and put it back together, except you didn't have to open up anything. Now, one criticism I got on that the old video where I showed you how to do the ATF thing was I didn't show how to start it back. And that's fair, because I kind of did it. I showed you how to do it. That one that I started, it had been sitting up for a year with ATF in the carburetor bowl, but I wasn't real clear. It was kind of confusing, so that's fair. Now whether it starts or not depends on how much you put in there. So if you just wet the little bit of the bottom of the bowl, then when you turn your fuel back on, like I'm gonna do right now, when that gas comes back in, if there's enough gas can get in there to dilute that ATF that's in there, then you're likely gonna have a hard start, but it'll start up. Let's see if this one will do it. I just turn the gas back on. Let's go. Run, choke, gas on. So you saw right there, I pulled on it. It ended up being twice because I didn't cut the choke off quick enough. Evidently, it could, the new gas could thin the mixture out enough to where it would catch enough and go. You saw that big poof of smoke? Everything's well. If you pull it 3 or 4 times and it don't start and it's just smoking, let me show you what to do. So you got ATF in it and it won't start, it just smokes. You see that? You remember our old buddy? The bowl bolt, the mouthful. All you got to do is sneak you a wrench in there and loosen in that bolt just a little bit, and then you'll see gas start coming out of it, or you'll see the red ATF start coming out of it, and then gas start coming out of it. Then you just tighten it up, and at that point you should pull it one time and it should go. I've done that. I've put too much in there before and couldn't get it to start and had to loosen that bowl. But you still don't have to take the carb apart. You still don't have to take all the air box and all that stuff apart. You don't have to do any of that. And I just thought about this too. This one doesn't have a bowl drain on it, but there's a lot of them that do. You don't have to screw with that bottom bowl bolt if it has a drain on it. Just drain it out, some of the ATF, screw it back in, and then you'll be good to go. But now, it's time for the Q&A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read comments off of that old video that everybody seems to like to look at. And I'm going to read some of the comments, and I'm gonna give my thoughts on. All right, Q&A time. So there was a lot of comments on that original video that were very similar. So I'm just gonna pick a random one out of them if they're very similar, and just answer that one. So don't be upset if I didn't pick your specific comment. A user says, does Marvel Mystery Oil do the same thing? I would think so. Honestly, I've never used it for that. I've used Marvel Mystery Oil before. It's actually surprisingly, appearance and smell and stuff, it's very close to ATF, but it's more expensive. So I don't think you go wrong with it. I don't know personally, but yeah, try it. Do the same thing. Just squirt it in there instead of squirting the ATF. Give it a shot. A user says, seems like a good way to hydrolock your motor to me. No, there's no way. You're putting it in a carburetor bowl. If you were going to put it in the, if you put the spark plug out and you're just squirting a whole bunch of it straight into the spark plug hole, yeah, maybe, but no, you're just trying to preserve the carburetor. A user says, it's best to use non-ethanol fuel. The crap that screws up carbs and leaves crap in carbs and other fuel parts is ethanol. Ethanol eats up rubber also. While he's partly right, non-ethanol fuel is better. There's a few points to make. Non-ethanol fuel is not, it still goes bad. Does it go bad as quick? No. Does it leave behind as what I call crusties? Does it leave behind as many? No. But there's still additive packs and things that they put, even in ethanol, non-ethanol fuel, that when the gas dries, it leaves it behind. I'm going to put a picture up right here of my pressure washer that I let sit for like 7 months with straight non-ethanol fuel. And it was one of those deals of I should have cranked it up, but I got busy. And you're going to see in the picture, you can see all the crap that was left in there. And I ended up having to clean the carb on it. It also should be brought up too that different parts of the country and in different times of the year, they're always changing those additive packs for ethanol and in non-ethanol fuel. So it's kind of a roll of the dice. And then also, you know, when there's a natural disaster going on, you kind of burn what you can get too. So it's not the end of the world to run some 10% or 15% ethanol in a pinch. Definitely it works. It'll burn fine. But you can expect to have problems a lot quicker than you would normally. A user says, I've had my generator since the hurricanes of 2004. I buy non-ethanol gas, add some Marvel Mystery Oil, I'm assuming to the gas, and stabilizer to it. When I put my generator away, I drain the fuel just as you did, but I leave the fuel line open and run the carb dry using the choke. We talked about that earlier. I can pull the generator out anytime, add fuel, and it'll start on 1 or 2 pulls every time. After hurricane season is over, all of the stored fuel goes into the truck for recycling. Yeah, that's a good thing. I mentioned that in the first video. If you're when you're draining the fuel, but still, even if you use all those products, that's not been my experience. Anybody who says they just drain the fuel out and then they pull the choke, they think they're getting all the fuel out. There's still like a little bit of fuel left in those jets and stuff, and it can cause you a problem. Now, it might crank up, but my question is, does it run good? You saw how that one was. It didn't run good. It wouldn't run on choke. Sometimes, and you really on a generator, you can't have it doing that ba-dum, 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 that they like to do when the carb's dirty, because then it makes your voltage be wrong. It's got to turn a certain amount of RPMs to make the proper hertz. If not, then you can actually start frying equipment inside your house if you try to hook it to it. And, you know, the people who say that, I'm not saying that you can not use ethanol fuel, or I'm not saying that you can use non-ethanol and get by with just draining it. Surely I've seen it and it runs fine, but I've got names for those people. They're either full of crap or they're super lucky, because that's not been my experience. Just draining them oftentimes is not enough. Viewer says, I think I will use 2-cycle oil. That was not the only comment that said something about 2-cycle oil. As I understand it, that's what the marine guys use when they fog a boat motor. That boat fogging stuff is just pretty much 2-cycle oil. I prefer the ATF because the ATF has more detergents in it. But if you put straight 2-cycle oil in that bowl, just like I put the ATF in that bowl, it probably works the same. And I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. I'm just showing you that something that works for me. So, and I saw a bunch of other things. There's guys talking about putting different kinds of like aviation gas and different kinds of more pure things in there. There's a lot of right ways and there's a lot of wrong ways, but they're probably looking at comments on that old video. There's some things on there that people are probably onto something for sure. A user says, I've argued my entire life ATF is not only a lubricant, it's hydraulic and a coolant. Marvel Mystery Oil and Cryol, I love Cryol, I love the way it smells, is nothing but ATF. There's a little bit of difference, but close. I unlock all my old motors with it. There's a lot of uses for ATF. I saw a bunch of comments, people talking about putting them in diesels and stuff. I've used ATF to prime a diesel engine. A diesel engine will burn straight ATF. Now that's an expensive way to run a diesel engine, but just to fill up a fuel filter, perfect. Actually, I wrote down some things you can do with it. You use it as a penetrating oil. You can spray it as a rust inhibitor. You can unstick engines. I've done that. You take the spark plugs out and just like put it in there and let it soak. A sludged engine. If you got one that the oil hasn't been changed in like it's supposed to, you can drain the oil out, and you can either use half oil, half ATF, or you can put all the way ATF in there, and it'll cut the sludge right out of an engine, and you just got to keep draining it and put more ATF in there. I've done that to clean the engine out before. All these things with ATF, maybe I need to make a video of all the uses of ATF and all the possibilities. I cannot find it right this minute. I'm looking through the comments right now, but there was one commenter, one viewer, user, whatever you want to call them, that said something about ATF not being nice to fuel line. And he's somewhat correct, because it'll swell that fuel line up and make it do weird things if you get some in the fuel line. But my response to that is, that's why I like that Gates barricade that I was boasting about earlier. It's definitely much more resistant to things like that, because I've used it with diesel fuel, no problems. Some of the regular gas lines, diesel fuel will mess it up. Can you use this method on a fuel injected engine? Sort of, probably. You don't have a fuel bowl on a fuel injected engine. That's the biggest thing. If you can figure out a way to get it to soak and sit in that fuel rail, you might be on with something. I'm thinking I may do something similar to that when I restart my Nissan hardbody that's been sitting for a lot longer than I'd like to admit. A user says, why don't you use motor oil instead? Seriously asking, thanks. It probably would work, but I like the ATF because it's a little thinner than most oils and it has more detergents. Just run 50-50, 2-stroke and gas. Works just as good. I don't know if it works just as good. He might be on something a little bit. If there's still gas in it, I know I have 2-stroke equipment that has gone bad. It does not go bad as quickly as gas without 2-cycle in there. But if I was going to use 2-cycle oil, I would put straight like 2-cycle oil in that carburetor bowl, just like I did the ATF. I've cleaned too many carbs on 2-cycle stuff to think that 2-cycle oil mixed with gas is super clean. It definitely lasts longer though. A user says, I love the old hard body in the background. Yes, I love it too, but it's been sitting back there for a while. I really need to pull it out. You can expect some videos on it before it's over with. A user says, wow, your knife's not sharp. You're right, it was not sharp in that one. And my knife gets sharpened and dulled all the time. That's what happens when you use it. You cut wires and everything else. It just happened to be when I filmed that one. It was not sharp. It's sharp now though, for sure. You just saw it. Well, that was most of the theme of a majority of the question or the comments that was on that original video. I hope I cleared some things up. But you know, if you've got some more questions, you can sure put them on this video. I appreciate all the subscribers I've gotten in the last month. It's been ridiculous. Thanks so much. I don't make videos that fast. I'm not a one video a week guy, but I put them out here and there when I get time. I put them out. I'm always got little projects going on around the house. I have old vehicles and equipment and stuff I do. Go look at the rest of the channel. I appreciate all the likes, the subscribes, and the comments. Thanks so much, guys. I'm glad I can be of help. I'm not a YouTube money guy. I don't care about any of that stuff. If I make a little money off of it, that's cool. But I just like being helpful. So, seeing this many comments, that means I've been helpful to at least somebody, and I love every bit of it. Like I said, I appreciate all the new subscribers and the comments and the likes. Glad I could be of help to somebody. Let's keep that energy going up. Check out some of my other stuff. Thanks for watching. Come back and see you.